Henry V is made more notable in today's history books, maybe because of the plays written by William Shakespeare, or maybe it's because he genuinely was known as a great warrior king, or perhaps it is quite simply because his body was boiled into a king-flavoured broth. Henry V was a son concerned for his future plans as king, as his father had suffered from ill health, Henry IV that is, and Henry V asked if his father, also known as Henry Bolingbroke, the usurper king, if he could step aside and allow him to rule. Initially, Henry V was unlikely to become king, as it was his father's cousin Richard II who sat upon the throne of England. It's believed that Henry grew up fast, and he did not have a choice in the matter. His mother died when he was young, and his uncle also died, and after Henry Bolingbroke took care of Richard II, Henry became the heir to the throne. But that came with its own challenges. As I've said, his father was unwell, and it's thought to have been either leprosy or syphilis, and to go with this, he had what is thought to have been either epilepsy or a heart condition, and Henry felt his father's illnesses were nothing short of a hindrance. Then, in 1413, Henry IV died, and Henry V became King of England, and it is thought that becoming king changed him in a way. Maybe it was the weight of being king, or the fact that Henry felt it was his divine right, and that he also wanted to reclaim France, which he tried to do by renewing the 100 Years' War. He became a heroic leader and a warrior king, but it's been said that Henry had always had the warrior in him. But being coronated as king made that aspect of his personality shine brighter. He waged campaigns against the Welsh rebels and Owain Glendower, and is said to have been pious, brave, and a military genius. But he is also said to have been occasionally cruel in temperament, with a lack of focus with domestic affairs. Now, as I've said, Henry V is another king who is remembered for his great authority and his soldiership. He earned his reputation as a warrior, and even came close to death on one occasion before the actual event. You see, in 1403, when he was prince, during the Battle of Shrewsbury, Henry made a grave mistake and looked up towards the sky at the exact moment an arrow came falling down, and this arrow hit him straight in the face, luckily missing his eye. The arrow did, however, embed in his cheekbone, causing a very difficult removal. So instead, Henry snapped the arrow and continued his fight, leaving the arrowhead in a very dangerous predicament. It was extremely close to Henry's arteries and nerves. Then it was an ex-prisoner called John Bradmore who had turned into a surgeon. Bradmore made a device that enabled him to pull the arrowhead out and then look inside of Henry's cheek. The wound was then cleaned with honey, and honey, interestingly, has antiseptic and healing properties. This act by John Bradmore saved Henry's life, and as such he was rewarded greatly for his service to the future king. An interesting point is that all portraits of Henry after this point were then made from the side in order to hide his scar. Now, the next key point is that Henry won his battle against the France at Agincourt, despite having a ratio of 1-3 against the French, with them having over 30,000 French troops. This number is down to a very nasty bout of dysentery, and thousands lost their lives to the nasty disease in this camp. But despite the poor-looking outcomes, the French lost due to the spiked trenches and the downpour of longbow arrows that showered them. So Henry, having survived this particular bout of dysentery, went home and married the French king's daughter, Catherine of Valois. He was also named in a treaty between the French and the English as regent and heir to the French throne, and this was known as the Treaty of Troyes. Now, Henry and Catherine were only married for 2 years, thereabouts, and although they had a son together, also called Henry, they didn't actually spend that much time in each other's company. Henry died on the 31st of August 1422, due to what at the time was thought to be dysentery, a sometimes fatal disease of the gut caused by poor hygiene or sanitation or even dirty, contaminated water. And it's a very bad infection which at the time had no cure. You had to ride the wave, and on this occasion Henry was not so lucky. But if you really look into it, Henry suffered for a long time, and dysentery, when fatal, is quite quick. This leads to the belief that he in fact died of something else, or an additional contributing factor. The mention of the term St. Facre's disease leads to this belief, and usually this term relates to illnesses such as venereal diseases, rectal or colon-related illnesses, hemorrhoids, fistulas or colon cancer. The logical choice would have been that Henry V died from colon rectal cancer at the age of 35. You see, Catherine of Valois even had the time to see Henry in France after travelling from England before he died, suggesting that it was more, if not something else, than dysentery. Something that was prolonged and sadly painful for the king, because, as I've said, dysentery, when fatal, was usually very quick. I also think that a king known for being a warrior isn't going to be remembered for dying from something that isn't classed as fitting for a war hero. The easiest thing to do is to suggest that he died from something that war heroes tended to get at the time, something like a fatal gut infection like dysentery. Now, the most interesting yet morbid part of this story is what happens next to this warrior king. In the 15th century, sending a king back to his own country just wouldn't work. There was no way to preserve the remains, and wrapping him in ox skins or furs, as was customary at the time, just wouldn't cut it. So, instead, they decided to do something else. Henry V's body was boiled down. He was essentially cooked to the point where his bones easily separated from his skin and his tendons and his ligaments. This cooked king was then separated into two different containers. One held the king's broth and the other his bones. And the first was left in France to be disposed of, and his bones were then taken back to England, where they were to be interred within Westminster Abbey. A grisly end to the story of Henry V, the great warrior king. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.